Hey, what's going on there, folks? Welcome back here to the end of the weekend. Well, we've still got half the weekend, well, maybe half a day of the weekend left. It is Sunday, July 21st, 2024, about 12:04 p.m. here, California time. Latest activity here on the Earthquake 3D program shows a 1.2 into the Alaska area. Also, a one-pointer there into the region of California. Now, we did see some further activity overnight here in the Lake Tahoe area, where we've been watching a little swarm of activity stirring up here directly underneath the Lake Tahoe region. This is not a volcano, but there is quite a few fault systems underneath this area that are very capable of producing some large earthquakes, and it's been quite a while since we've seen any large-scale movement. If you didn't get a chance to check out my update last night, well, there's a little quick reminder here that this area in the Lake Tahoe region underneath the lake is capable of producing a 7.3 magnitude earthquake, and tsunamis around the lake up to 30 feet. That's going to be 10 meters high in the clear blue lake, where, of course, a lot of high-dollar homes exist out there along the shoreline. Now, here's the other concerning part, that it's roughly every 3,000 to 4,000 years that earthquakes strike on the fault, producing a decent earthquake up there, 7.3. And the most recent shaker was about 4,500 years ago, so that is well past this average time span, indicating that the fault is overdue for another earthquake. Now, whether this is going to lead to a bigger earthquake or not, well, it remains to be seen. Either way, we got a pretty decent swarm of activity underneath the Lake Tahoe area. I'm going to include the last week here as well, because we did have a couple quakes on there that are past the 24-hour threshold that took place early yesterday morning. So it's afternoon right now, so it wouldn't account for that 24-hour threshold. These would be beyond it. So as of right now, we got about 41 earthquakes here in this area. If you want to include these little ones up north, so be it. But the fault systems themselves here, there's a West Tahoe fault. This is the one that's capable of producing a 7.3. These other fault systems here, the North Tahoe fault and the Incline Village fault as well, is capable of producing some large damaging earthquakes. And the trend here that these earthquakes are following are not normal in terms of following a specific fault system. These are more or less left to right, which is a little odd. The fault does not run left, from west to east up here. It runs from roughly on average north to south, right? As you can see on these fault systems. So it's a little odd. Got earthquake activity spreading out all over the place here underneath the Lake Tahoe area. And again, that's 41 earthquakes. The latest one this morning about 6 o'clock, a 0.8. Some of the local news stations around here are starting to pick up on the seismic activity, because it was being felt here. A couple of those threes yesterday were felt around the Lake Tahoe area. Now, this 3.4 stirred up about 10 minutes following the arrival of the surface waves from that 6.2 earthquake that struck down into the Guatemala area. Let me show you guys here real quick and bring back the map from yesterday here. There's that 6.2 fairly deep into the Middle American Trench here. Obviously, the strain from this may not affect areas up here along the west coast. It doesn't make sense, right, for an earthquake to see all that momentum and pressure transferred up here. It wouldn't do it. But the seismic waves that are produced from large earthquakes travel around the globe. And the 10-minute time span that it took here from the earthquake to the arrival of those waves is pretty much accurate. And this is when the swarm started stirring up here with that 3.4 and many other earthquakes following that arrival of the surface waves. I do believe that these seismic waves can be a trigger to earthquakes and larger quakes at a distance. It was seen before. It's been noted by the USGS. A few years back, the USGS put out an article about how the large earthquake up here in Alaska triggered an earthquake swarm in Yellowstone. There's no such thing as coincidence here. This is literally 10 minutes after the earthquake, the 6.2, when we've seen the swarm of activity really start to stir up here with a 3.4. That's this here, about 10 minutes after the 6.2 down south in the Guatemala area. That's about how long it would take for the seismic waves to get and reach this area. So I believe that earthquake definitely triggered up this swarm of activity underneath the lake. It's possible this could have been, just needed a little kick, so to speak, or a little bump to stir the earthquake activity up. And it's continuing. So there's that 3.4 almost immediately following that 6.2 down south earlier yesterday. There was a 2.2, another 3 in here about 8 o'clock last night. A couple other ones, couple other smaller quakes here. And so far today after midnight, we've seen mostly smaller microquakes, about 10 or 15 of them in the very small microquake range, with the 0.8 here, 0.8, not an 8-pointer, but a 0.8 being one of the latest quakes, about 10 kilometers deep. Some of these earthquakes, though, are, let me see, zoom in a little bit here. Some are shallow. Look at that. That's a 1.2, fairly shallow there. Let me see if this has been reviewed. This is automatic status, so this could get revised to a deeper level. But the majority of these quakes happening around 8 to 9 kilometers below the surface. And it's something to watch, right? It's been a little while since we've seen a big earthquake up here, 7.3, right? As it notes here in this article, there's many articles. If you look up the potential for earthquake activity there underneath Lake Tahoe, it's surprisingly a little scary because there's history. There's been studies out here, right? People aren't just making wild guesses. There's studies onto rock slides. They look at fracturing going on across the area, and then they can make a decision on what caused that fracturing, whether it's fault stress or volcanic or something else. And they come up with this magnitude, 7.3, with tsunamis up to about 30 feet or so in the Lake Tahoe area. And this time period here is a little scary because we're 500 years overdue potentially for a big earthquake up there at Lake Tahoe. And this article was put out in 2012. So we'll continue to watch that. Definitely got a decent amount of earthquake activity stirring up there, specifically underneath the Lake Tahoe area. I was looking for a seismograph station up there, but I couldn't find any. A lot of these stations that I tried to access are not available. So I may have to dig around a little bit deeper and add a certain network to watch the activity up there. I'm sure there is some. I just got to get the correct station to key up here. Either way, keep an eye here on Lake Tahoe area. No guarantee there's going to be a big earthquake, but as I've mentioned many, many times here in previous videos, we've been living in some very quiet times out here in terms of geology stuff, right? Volcanoes, earthquakes, stuff like that. It's definitely possible we could be coming into a time of elevated events. Talking about the Cascadia, San Andreas Fault, maybe numerous faults throughout the Bay Area. You just never know. That's why it's always good to be prepared. Not scared, right? Don't ever be scared and panic and sell your home. You don't want to do that. You just want to make sure you have a plan. Yeah, 7.3 underneath here, the tsunamis would be almost immediately across this area. That would not be good. But just be prepared out there, folks. As with any earthquake swarm in the past, anywhere, it doesn't matter where you're at, we've seen them potentially lead to bigger earthquakes, and then at times we've seen them just continue for a little bit and then die off. So it's a 50-50 toss-up there, whether we're going to see some larger earthquake activity or not. Cascadia subduction zone, most of this activity here from yesterday at the southern end. Not a whole lot up into the Pacific Northwest for now. The rest of California, aside from some activity there across the Clear Lake volcanic field, these are hydrothermal plants out here. These are not volcanic rumblings, so to speak. These are a bunch of these hydrothermal plants out here. I was down here a couple years back investigating what all this stuff was down here, and there's a whole process involved in creating the process involves creating earthquakes, but also at the same time their main goal is to produce energy out here, some green energy. Look it up. I think it's still the same folks there, the Calpine Hydrothermal Plant Energy Solutions. And there's a whole method involved in creating some energy out there, which involves earthquake activity. They're utilizing the heated areas below. to produce energy. All right, let's see what else we got here. Bay Area of California, they're fairly quiet for right now. There's a little trail of earthquakes on the Hayward Fault. That's another dangerously hazardous fault system here that I think could kick up really soon. It's one of the higher fault systems here that has a higher percentage of seeing a large earthquake than, say, the Calaveras Fault or the Greenville Fault. Hayward Fault here is very dangerous, capable of producing a large earthquake, and it goes through a highly densely populated area here along the East Bay. Long Valley Supervolcano, fairly quiet up there for now. Southern California, very quiet. There's a handful of smaller quakes here, but this is actually below normal activity in terms of any daily counts here. Nothing above 2.5 in this area, all small microquakes, and just very minimally at that. Into the Yellowstone area, nothing showing up there on the graph, so let's go double check, see what we have going on here on this Sunday. There's a little earthquake that did show up here. You guys see that? Let me pull this up a little bit. I'm talking about this reading right here. That's a distant earthquake, but it did pick up. It was picked up on Maple Creek, Holmes Hill, Purple Mountain, barely on Mary Lake, over here on Parker Peak as well. Promontory, Lake Butte. So let me see what we got over there. 2.2, 5 o'clock in the morning. I don't think it was that one. This is fairly recent. This is literally within the last hour or so, maybe half hour. So whatever it is, not being reported out here. I wonder if it was, well, there's nothing. Oh, look at that down south of Australia. 5.1 coming in right now. That was at 11:36. That's an odd earthquake out there off of the plate boundary. Now, this area, though, they've been seeing quite a bit of earthquake activity out here. Let me pull up the GeoNet servers here and show you guys. Now, this is the last 24 hours. We've got to go back the last week or so, and you'll see that there's been a swarm of activity out here around Perth, it looks like. A decent amount of earthquake activity, generally light in the 2 range, but over the past couple weeks here, we've seen increasing earthquake activity here around the Western Australia area, notably up north here as well. I think we've seen something above the 2-pointer threshold in this region, 3.5. And now we got a 5-pointer stirring up here just south of the area. It's a little interesting. Off of the plate boundary. Trying to think what's out there. Not a whole lot. But that's an odd earthquake. And I say odd because I look at these maps every single day, every single hour. And you guys know me. I look at these maps all the time for years. And that's a very rare, odd earthquake to see out here in this area. Let me check out historical data. Wow. Yeah, nothing out here for historically. Go back here real quick. Here's the legend. Well, since about 1900 or so, 4.5 and above, there's always going to be earthquake activity along the plate boundary, which is very notable here on the map. That's down south. Further up north away from it, it looks like maybe there has been some south of the area today where that 5-pointer struck, but like I say, it's been a little while since I've seen anything specifically out there in that area. It's just odd. Of course, we've seen a lot of deep earthquake activity here recently in the last couple days. That 6-pointer down here in the Middle America Trench, that earthquake in Chile there was fairly deep. Let's look at the last 7 days of earthquake activity here. Starting with the largest magnitude, 7.4. That was down in Chile, fairly deep there, 117 kilometers, 6.2 there from yesterday, 265 kilometers deep. Quite a few deep earthquakes out here in the last few days here. So something is brewing out here. Something's cooking to get an odd earthquake off the plate boundary like that. New Zealand, you got anything going on overnight? Oh yeah, New Zealand's been cooking out here. Look at that. A lot of earthquake activity on each side. Literally, you could draw a triangle right here and put New Zealand right in the middle of it. They've seen a lot of earthquake activity recently. Not anything big yet, but definitely some noticeable creeping along the plate boundary here. 4.3, the latest quake, it looks like, into the South Island area, right on the plate boundary. So I'm going to go over to the GeoNet servers real quick, see what we got. All right, GeoNet. And if anyone gets a chance there, head over to Missy Mimi's channel. I'm sure quite a few folks follow her as well. She's my beautiful fiance and co-host here on the channel. She's feeling really sick today. Actually, it came on yesterday and got a high fever and whatnot. So a little bit of sickness going on there with her. So if you could go send her a happy wish for some wellness, I'm sure she would appreciate that. Even if you leave a comment here on this update video, I'll make sure she gets it. There's that 4.3 6 hours ago. Again, that is on the plate boundary there, South Island area. 16 kilometers deep for that quake. Seems like we're getting a trail of movement on that plate boundary. A lot of deeper activity here recently around the Hikurangi subduction zone. There's that 3.4 from yesterday. And these are just the earthquakes that are being felt. May not look like much, but definitely getting some elevated movement out here. There's that 4-pointer showing up quite nicely on the South Island station here. Again, that's going to be a 4.3. So keep an eye on this area. You got movement west here and east. This plate boundary has to adjust. It is minimally. It's definitely adjusting somewhat. A 4.3, that's, you know, a decent earthquake. Moderate, minor to moderate. But yeah, keep an eye on New Zealand there. That may have something to do with all this activity we're seeing west right now. Maybe getting ready to kick up a little bit on the larger side here of magnitudes. So keep an eye on the New Zealand area. That's just a very rare quake. Odd. 5.1. Has been reviewed. Of course, no one's going to feel it. It's well offshore. All right, let's see what else we got here. Kind of jumped off the states here and went west. There's not a whole lot going on here for the eastern portion of the country. One earthquake from late last night, a 2.2 in the North Carolina region. The New Madrid seismic zone, pretty quiet for now. In the Hawaii area, got a little swarm of activity stirring up here once again. Been watching this pretty closely here. We're at a elevated level of inflation across this region here, and it's just a matter of time before we see something happen as far as a maybe eruptive fissure or a magma intrusion off somewhere to the rift zones. So let's go see what's going on here. That was a water bottle. I had to move off the computer. Not a smart idea keeping a water bottle up by the keyboard, right? Not good. I've seen a lot of people just, whoops, spill it over on the keyboard. I don't want to be that guy. All right, earthquake activity. Nothing intense. There's definitely been some earthquake activity there on the seismograph station that's recorded in the last 12 hours, but I don't see any sign of any huge increase in earthquake activity for now. Still got the upper east rift zone here. A little bit of migration towards the lava lake area. This is a live view here, taken just a couple minutes ago there, Hawaii time. Really nothing of abnormal viewing that I can see here across the surface level. This is the lava lake where we have seen some previous eruptions there take place. The last one was off on the southwest rift zone, a little distance there, off in this area. But, that's since it's only a 10-hour long eruption that halted, solidified, and everything seems to be wanting to kick up here in this area. Still can't rule out the potential of maybe seeing some eruptive activity up at the summit region there around the lava lake. But I'm leaning more towards where we've been seeing the concentrated earthquake activity here on the upper east rift zone, roughly in this region. I think we had seen some events back there in 1974. Let me bring this up here a little bit. The red here is going to be the older events. Yeah, I think it's going to be this one right here. There's a couple different reds. That's the more recent one's going to be right here, I believe. A little kind of a brighter red. But this region, 1951 and 1982, that's where we're seeing all that earthquake activity right now. Within that zone of former eruptions there so many years ago. But we'll continue to keep an eye on it. GPS deformation data here. See what we got for today. There's a little spike, a large inflated event took place here last night. I don't believe that was an instrument adjustment because we did see some elevated earthquake activity roughly about the time we noticed that spike. So that could mean that, we're getting closer to an eruption there at the surface level. Still going up and up and up. And, what can I say? We're at a highest level observed here at the summit and upper east rift zone since 2018. You guys remember that 2018 eruption there that went off to the lower east rift zone and created quite a view down there, and damaged some homes and some road networks and whatnot. Lenalia Estates. I can't remember exactly how to pronounce that. I'm probably not saying it right, but yeah, that was a fairly big deal out there. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that, as always. What else we got around the globe here for right now, at least on the map? Let's check out the actual globe. There's that activity stirring up down south here. Keep an eye on the middle point. Not so much here across Papua New Guinea and Solomon Islands area. We've seen a handful, maybe one or two earthquakes here, but realistically, this has still been fairly quiet. It's been awfully quiet. And I've been watching my videos here. I've been talking about it. I've been saying how quiet this area is. There's just so much going on right now. It's hard to keep up with everything, but that's one area I'm watching because it's not supposed to be so quiet like that. Further down south in the Baja California area, those are some older events from yesterday, late last night. Not so much into Southern California, but it does seem like things want to stir up here in this area of the plate boundary. A couple fracture zones and even some spreading seafloor centers down here as well. You can see the unzipping pattern there and new seafloor ridges being created. The Atlantic Ocean, pretty quiet. Nothing going on there, at least on the USGS side of things. And basically rings true there on the EMSC as well. One earthquake north of Iceland. Let's go see what we got here across the area of Iceland. So a little bit of movement here today in the last 12 hours down around the Grindavik area. You guys notice that? Little bit. Nothing big. Just a little bit of movement there in that area where we've seen the last couple eruptions there. So let's go see if they put out any type of update on the weekend. They normally don't, but I do want to double check and see the Icelandic Met Office here. This is put out, about 4 days ago, so nothing new. But they are talking about the increasing probability of seeing another eruption here within the next 3 to 4 weeks. But it's possible it could be sooner than that because we are looking at some elevated inflation here underneath the area. Let me show you guys the GPS statements here. We're still live, still running. What's going on here? Are these guys not working? Clicked on that, nothing's happening. I don't like that. I'm going to get off that real quick. Check out a different window. It might just be that site. I can't even access the Safari area inflation chart. See? And it's not me, so it's got to be that network itself. We'll have to check that out a little bit later. There's an earthquake coming in Baja California area right now within the last few minutes, 2.6. So keep an eye on things here today, folks. Got a lot going on. Not a whole lot of space weather, huh? Where's our G1 class storm we were expecting, right? Yeah, I think I called that one pretty good. Didn't notice it coming in last night when it was supposed to, so it looks like it has completely missed us. No arrival of that expected CME. It dodged a little. It was just a little one too. It wasn't supposed to stir up too much activity. Just maybe a G1 class storm, but it never materialized. So here's the latest Aurora forecast for tonight. As you can see, not a whole lot. KP index maybe around 3 or so. But don't count on that too much there. There was our G1 class storm expected, and that's 2100 to 0. Let's see here. Looks like they moved it for July 21st. That would be tonight, the 21st to 0-100, right? Because right now it's the 21st, 1930 UTC time. So it looks like maybe they're putting it off. Maybe they're thinking that it hasn't arrived or it's slower than expected, but I think it completely missed us. So I'm not even going to focus on that. As far as flaring activity goes, 10% chance for X flare, M flare at 55, C flare around 99% chance or so, and just a little bit of C flare activity overnight, close to the M flare category. We do have numerous sunspots out here, but well, they're really not looking all that promising out here. Maybe some continued threats there for some C flare, maybe low grade M flares, but I'm not seeing anything that would be consistent with some X flare activity here soon. I don't see it. Moon, beautiful moon. I might get out there tonight, get some moon shots. 100% full tonight. And again, no major auroras expected. Calling for a little bit of forecasting there later this late afternoon, early evening time period, but I don't think it's going to happen. Storm Prediction Center here. Got some marginal risk for some severe weather out here across the desert southwest, mainly due to some wind and some hail. That's about it in those areas. Really nothing of major concern aside from that. Just typical thunderstorm activity brewing up out here, popping up in the afternoon and giving maybe a nice little cool down out there after a rain shower. All right, folks, I am going to jump off here. Live seismos look pretty quiet for now. Not a whole lot going on. Again, I'll try and see if I can pull up the Lake Tahoe seismic network here. I have to add it. There's many different stations here I can add, and there's hundreds of them. I literally have to go through all of them unless I know the code for the Sierra Nevada network. I'll have to look it up and see. But Great Basin. Anyway, I'll look at that here after this update. Have a good day. We'll catch you guys back out here a little bit later on this evening unless something major happens. Stay safe, folks.